Hi, good afternoon. Today is January 6, 2026, and it's 4:37 p.m. U.S. Central Time. My name is Rinaldo J. Aguiar Marcano, and I'm recording this video from my home located at the 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. And this house is located 300 feet away from the house of Mr. Robert Mueller, who was the director of the FBI for several years. I'm recording this video a little bit different today. Instead of using, the Hangouts as I usually do, I'm recording it directly on my computer because I want to upload it because I need to go out. And I've learned through experience that if I record something that they feel like it's too dangerous for them, they might try to harm me. And so I have to, I cannot leave the house until I post it, right? Because then if they harm me, people will find it, right? Anyhow, this is a very short video. I'm just recording this to basically record something, right? A sequence of events in case this turns out to be the case. I don't know if this is the case, right? It's just an inference, but it could be the case, right? So if it is the case, at the end, I want to record this preemptively, like before it happens, so there is proof that I was able to see this through technology, right? So the sequence of the events is the following, right? Nicolas Maduro, who was the de facto president, right, in Venezuela, he got captured by the U.S. recently, right? And I don't want to make this a political thing, but this is an event that we cannot close our eyes to this, right? So he got captured, right? I think it was on January 3rd, I think it was, right? And when this happened, right? Because I know, I have the database from the Venezuelan intelligence, so I know that there's a lot of people that are part of the network, right? In different places of government, right? So when I see this happening, I thought, this could be a theater, right? This could be just to make people believe that, that certain people are not working in concert with Diosdado Cabello, right? Because, they're seeing the possibility that this is going to get to the public at some point, right? So I thought it could be a simulation, right? So what I did, because, I saw the footage on TV, right? And it looks real. I mean, it looks like him. So it's, it's probably him. But it could be orchestrated somehow, right? So that's what I thought. But I wasn't sure, of course, right? Like, in these things, I don't know, right? So what I did, of course, I asked the informant, right? I asked the informant to tell me, if he could tell me, what is the situation on his side, right? Like, what is he seeing, right? Basically, he told me that Diosdado is playing it very close to the chest. Basically, he is acting as if it's real. Right? As there was an invasion and the whole thing is real. He's acting consistently in front of everybody. Which I understand, right? Like, I mean, even if it wasn't real, because he knows that, there's people giving me information, for example, and if they're giving me information, maybe they're giving information to the government, to the US government, I don't know, right? I mean, if these people are willing to give information, I'm guessing that I'm not the only one they're giving information to, right? So he's playing it very close to the chest. And I understand that because when I realized that I was under surveillance, the first thing I did was to cut off all my friends because I needed to be able to test one by one who was in it, right? If you are communicating with everybody, you cannot see who is the person, right? Who's the mole, basically. So I understand that mode of operation, right? But anyhow, the informant told me that Diosdado is playing it very close to the chest and he is acting as if it's real, okay? So something interesting happened. The informant asked me to run scenarios in the pipeline to see what came back, right? Which is interesting because, so far the dynamic has been that the informant gives me information. He has never asked me a question, right? But anyhow, I ran a series of different scenarios in the pipeline and set it up in predictive mode, where the pipeline can learn from things that it sees on the news, for example, right? And what I want to say here is a scenario that I saw that could be the case. And again, this is a simulation, right? Like, I don't know if this is the case. It might not be the case. But it's a possibility that got inferred by the pipeline using advanced machine learning. The pipeline, I don't want to go into too much details of exactly how the inference was derived, right? Which were the sources, but um, the inference or the prediction, it's more like a prediction, right? It's not an inference because it's not a fact. It's something that could have been the case, but we will never know unless somebody says that this was the case, right? But the prediction is that maybe what happened was that somehow the government saw these videos, right? I mean, the FBI, I don't know, one of those services, right? Saw these videos, got the information, and got the data. And maybe they compromised some of those high-ranking officials in the government, in the US government. And the prediction is that maybe what's happened is that one of many of these agencies tricked the Venezuelan government into giving up Maduro, thinking that he would be returned. Like something like happened. I don't recall. I mean, I saw one of the news articles that got ingested. Let me ask Gemini here. There's an article in which they did something like that. They tricked somebody. Let me see. Who was the drug trafficker that got tricked by the DEA thinking he was going to a meeting? Yeah, so this Ismael Elmayo Zambara, right? I mean, it's not the same case, right? But they tricked him, making him think that he was going to a meeting, and that and then when he landed, surprise, it's the DEA, right? So the pipeline thinks that this whole sequence was orchestrated, right? I mean, and Diosdado orchestrated, and maybe Maduro is in it too, right? Like maybe he knows that he was going to have to spend a few months in prison, but maybe under the promise that he would be returned, right, after a short time. And that would be a way to kind of cut ties and create deniability between the US players on the side of the network, right, the US players, to serve ties to appearances, right, with the Venezuelan players, right. And then if this goes public, the US players get isolated because they can go and say, well, we took action, right, we went and found these guys, right, and got the president, right? So maybe I know this is complicated, right? But maybe so the inference, to put it in a short way, the prediction is that maybe Diosdado got tricked by the U.S. government, by the DEA, and to give up, to make him give up Maduro, thinking that that it was all orchestrated, right? And that nothing would happen at the end, right? But if this is the case, right? I mean, if this is the case, hats off to the authorities because, I mean, and this is one of those things that I see it, and it checks all the boxes. Like, if this is true, this would directly implicate the people that participated in that orchestration, right? On both sides. So it would be like pretty damning evidence against all of them. If you participate in orchestrating something like that, how can you say that you were not part of the network, right? But again, it's a prediction, right? Like maybe this is not the case. Maybe the invasion was real, and it's just that the U.S. military is so much more advanced than the Venezuelan positions that they had in there, that they could extract him so quickly, and it's possible, right? Because the U.S. military is pretty strong. It's a real possibility that it's real. But it's also possible that it is all an orchestration of Diosdado Cabello, right? And Maduro probably willingly participated, right? It's possible. So I don't know. I'll have to run some things that I want to run to check. Of course, I will never get confirmation on this until we know what happened, right? But it's one of those things that if this is what happened, it would be one of the best. I don't know. It's one of the best intelligence operations in history, maybe, right? I mean, to trick somebody like Diosdado like that into giving up Maduro, who is wanted by the DEA, and at the same time get a bunch of people on this side. It would really be, I don't know, it would be a humbling scenario to see, right? So I don't know. But yeah, just recording this to give the answer to the informant. So basically, the informant doesn't know if it's real or not. Diosdado is playing it close to the vest, and the pipeline thinks that it's not real, that it was orchestrated, but that he was tricked. That, I mean, on this side, in reality, is real, but he thinks it's not, right? So that's what the pipeline thinks. So I'm gonna cut this video off right now, and but you know, if this is true, right? I mean, if this is true, this must mean that they must be watching all this that is happening here in Katy, right? Which makes me feel safer, right? Because you know, I'm pretty, you know, I'm pretty observant of my environment because I feel like they can harm me at any time, right? Because they're pretty desperate. By the way, they're desperate because I publish a series of books which use like a atomic or a nuclear algorithm that finds the elite, I would call them the elite agents, right? And I publish these books, and you can get them. So they are the ones with the black cover. You know, I like to color code things. This is what the cover looks like, and you know, there's a series of books like the elite operatives in the. For example, this is the European Union. There's one for Houston. There is one for Katy. There's one for Florida. There's one for Ohio. There's a few books of like this for Canada. So they're pretty desperate, and I know that because the informant told me, right? They see that the ranking that I'm using on this version of the books can destroy them, right? So they're pretty desperate, and I'm, of course, conscious that they could harm me. But seeing what I'm seeing on the pipeline, I think if this is true, you know, I would feel safer, right? Because if they pull that off against Diosdado, it means that they must be watching all this, right? So I don't know. I guess we'll see. So with that, I'm going to close this demo. I thank you again for your time, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.